So if you scanned last time, your files are already in your 2520 folder on your computers you're currently at. If not, obviously you have to scan something to get a file. So I'm just going to drag one of these in here. I'm going to borrow Dennis's severed head. Most likely it'll come in at some random scale. It doesn't matter, obviously. You just make it as big as we need to make it. There it is. Okay, and it's going to look disgusting because of just how it does what it does. Okay, so just ignore the fact that it looks disgusting. I'm going to rotate it correctly. There we go. I'm going to try to get into this view and just line it up the best I can. Done. Any questions? You guys are not that lucky. All right, so once I have it there, I'm going to export it out. We're going to take this into ZBrush. In order to take something from any program into another one, the same thing is going to apply. We have to figure out what ZBrush wants. So I go to import inside ZBrush, and you'll see that it accepts OBJs, which is exactly what we exported out. And it also accepts Maya files, which are MA files, not the MB ones. So I could save this as either one. Typically, I'm going to save it as an or as an OBJ file. That's more universal. So let me make a project folder real quick. While I'm doing this, on your computers, open up ZBrush because I want to have a little follow along so that you can see how ZBrush works. There we go. Head. Sweet. All right. So now, just so you can see the guy inside mine, and then we'll play around a little bit. ZBrush scan, scenes, head. There we go. Would you like to remove? Yes. And then it's deleting a bunch of points that aren't really used, so I hit OK. And then it brings in the head. There it is. Sweet. All right. What was that? Oh, it did, yeah.
Got like little seat, all the little rivets and everything in there.
Yeah. You can see back there, obviously that was where it was open. And then right here, if we had more of a light, probably we would have been able to get the underside of the chin and light that up a little bit more, but it works. All right, so you probably have ZBrush open by now. I just want to make sure that, that would come in. So we're good. I'm going to go back to my default tool. Surprisingly, I never had to go back to my default tool. Let me just close it. Okay, so ZBrush is probably the worst program in the world as far as interface goes. Their first time in ZBrush, they probably spent an hour in it and then quit and then got back into it a couple weeks later or a month later or whatever it is. It's one of the most probably intimidating programs just because of how things work. Once you understand the basics, though, then it's like 1,000 times easier and you realize how cool it really is. So the first thing that pops up is this light box. It has demo stuff, so if you wanted to see like the things that they've created, you can definitely start there. ZBrush is a modeling tool, it's a sculpting tool, it's a painting textures tool, it's a rendering tool. It can do fibers, it can do hard surfaces, it can do soft surfaces. The list is unlimited. The cool thing about it is that it's more like a clay software versus a Maya software where we're like extruding stuff. It's basically like you have a hunk of clay and you're just like adding more clay to it and pushing and pulling it around. Okay, so you can click this light box button and it'll go away and then you can have the actual workspace. Okay, so if you just click and drag inside the scene, you'll get this. So click and drag inside your scene so you can look at how beautiful that is. ZBrush was originally a 2.5D program. Photoshop is a 2D program. As you paint, the paint is basically on one plane, but as you paint inside ZBrush, they wanted to be able to give the appearance that it would actually get thicker or stacked on top of it. That's why, as I paint in here, you actually feel like maybe there's a bit more depth involved in there. That's what it's for. Now, this is, right now, it's not a 3D item. This is simply just like square blocks that just stack up on top of each other. So over here on the right, which is where it says tool and it says load tool, save as, blah, blah, blah. Most of the stuff we're either going to touch here or straight across this thing. Those are the two main areas that we're going to play with. This bar is not used too much for beginners. More advanced stuff, you will start playing with more of that stuff. Okay, so if I click on Sphere 3D, and then I click and drag here, you'll see how the sphere gets created kind of like in the middle of those things. Okay, again, because it's kind of like a fake 3D right now, that's what it's doing. And if I were to click and drag another sphere, it would do the same thing. And as I start creating them, you can see how some are created in front, some are created on top, some are created on the sides of it, or whatever. Okay, again, still not 3D, still faking this 3D look, right? So I'm going to hit draw, nope, document, there it is, and new, and then say no. Okay, so go to document, say new, and then say no to clear your document, right? All right, and then just drag a sphere. If you have the light box open, click that light box button and it'll make the thing go away. There you go. Okay, so I drug one sphere onto my screen, and then what I want to do to say, hey, this is a 3D item, I'm going to hit T. And T basically puts it in what's called edit mode. Now it's a 3D item. Now, unlike every other program or every program, it has to have different hotkeys, otherwise you wouldn't have to pay so much money for it. So Alt, left click, which is our spinning around inside Maya. This does panning or tracking, so I can move my object. Alt, middle button does nothing. Alt, right button does the exact same thing. This one uses the right mouse button more. So I'm using the right mouse button and clicking and dragging with control, and it does that. Alt with the right mouse button does that. And then holding nothing and clicking and dragging lets me spin around the object. Okay, so use typically your right mouse or left mouse button. Right mouse button to zoom, to track, and then to spin around. Now this is important because as you get zoomed into your object, you won't be able to do anything unless you hit the right buttons. So for instance, I'm right here. I want to spin this around. If I start doing that, I get this error message. Okay, I could spin this way using the right mouse button, but when I use the left mouse button, I get that, right? So I have to make sure I know which buttons to hit. So if you just use the right mouse instead of the left, you're using Control and Alt, you'll figure it out quick. So we have a sphere. It's obviously 3D right now. We need to make it so that we can sculpt on it. So in this tool area, there's one that says Make Polymesh 3D. Way down at the bottom, you can control how many divisions there are. Don't worry about that now. Just click Make Polymesh 3D. Okay. So what this does is it takes that sphere shape and actually makes a 3D object that we could then sculpt on. So now if I come over here and I just click and drag, you can see how I'm sculpting on this. And as I spin around, I can sculpt some more. And as I spin around, I can sculpt some more. Okay. So take a few seconds and just kind of sculpt some random junk onto that sphere. Obviously spin around too, so you're hitting other areas. Alright, so what is nice is that somehow the people got together and decided that some of the hotkeys would be the same. So whatever button we're hitting here, we're left clicking and dragging, this is pulling stuff out of the surface. If we hold down Shift and we click and drag, that will smooth the surface so that it basically is just kind of smoothing out those points. If we hold Alt and drag, that does the opposite. So if we're pulling out, Alt would push in. Okay? Again, something important because there is no push in brush, we have to just do that. Okay. Now if you hold Control, this is one of the nice features about this. Control is painting basically a mask. So if I have something like a specific area where I want to just isolate, you know, I don't want this to be touched or I do want this to be touched, I can use Control to paint what I do or don't want to be touched. And then as I go through and start painting, you'll see how that area does not get affected by what I'm doing with my brush. Okay, so you can see how that does that. All right, just like every program, hotkeys are awesome, so make sure you memorize them. What is nice about ZBrush is hotkeys are linked to everything that typically we do when you hover over it. So when I go to the Z intensity, which is how much it's pushing it, pulling it out or pushing it in, you'll see the letter U next to it. Guess what the hotkey is for Z intensity? Z. It's U. Okay, so we click U, and then we can just click and drag to change that to make that more intense or less intense. Okay, and obviously the more intense it is, then it would do stuff like that. It is tablet friendly, so that means that right now it's at 76. If I lightly press with my tablet, it might be down to 10, and if I hard press, it's going to go up to 76. So again, something that is important, because when you're drawing 3D shapes, being able to take something that's very thick and make it thinner or whatever is important. S is for draw size, which is your brush size. You'll notice that there's two circles. One of them is the major radius, and then the other one is the fall off start point. Okay, so the brush will go out all the way to the top pieces, but it'll start fading off right at that center area. Okay, so as I click and drag, you'll see right here in the middle it's most strong, and then it tapers off. If I hit no, not U, O, if I hit O and I drag this either way, I will get a different result. So let me go to S for size. Let me shrink this down. So you can see how blocky this is compared to going the other way with my focal shift, and now it's like very spotty. Okay. Now again, what's awesome about this, we can just literally just sculpt whatever we want. I'm going to take my focal shift back to 0. I'm going to clear my mask, so I hold Control and I just drag off into Nowheresville, and that clears it. As you're spinning around, if you hold Shift, Maya doesn't have this, but Cinema does, Substance does, something that we use does. Okay, so we can hold Shift to kind of lock our stuff. Now there is an XYZ, we don't have to worry about it. Okay, what we're doing right now, there's not really any real purpose to it. There is an XYZ here. There is a rotate. We can click on rotate. We can click on this tool and rotate our model around if we need to, just to line it up. You guys may appreciate this if you've used ZBrush in the past. The move tool has been updated in R8. In 7, it was a horrible tool that, again, for whatever reason, they decided to try something on their own. It didn't work. Whenever you're in this tool, you want to get back out. I go back to draw, which is Q. There we go. Now, pay attention to this. So I hit T on accident because my hand just slipped and I went to T and I didn't know what I was doing. And then I start to sculpt and I go, what? And I say, that's not right. What? I keep doing it. Okay? So I just really screwed this thing up. Okay? So if I hit T now, saying, oh, I realized I forgot to hit edit, and now I start spinning around, look at how just that last one is the only one that's actually 3D. The rest are like painted onto the canvas. Again, this will happen to you because it happens to me all the time. I go to color, I say clear, it clears the rest of them off the screen. I still have my guy there, and he's still able to be deformed and manipulated and whatever. As you're doing these, every single thing that we're building here is not a 3D model at this point. It's a tool, is how ZBrush defines it. Okay? So that's why under the tool area, he's listed there. Okay? It's silly, but whatever. Cool. So we know how to change our intensity. We know how to change our focal shift and our draw size. We may want to add more divisions. If this thing is, if I go super small with this, really pixelated like that, I may want to add some finer detail. Over here is how many points are on that surface. So right now there's about 8,000. If I hold down Control and I hit D, that gives me 4 times as many points. So 8,000 times 4 is about 32,000. More points means more smoother shaping. I hit Control D again, more smoother shaping. Hit Control D again, more smoother shaping. Okay? So every time I hit Control D, it's going to take my points, multiply them times 4, and then give me a lot more points. Now, ZBrush is known for being able to do this. That's 8 million divisions right there. And then you'll see how smooth this is translating. Like, I can paint like crazy and ZBrush doesn't even care. I spin around the model, I do something here, I do something there. I could go crazier, hit Control D again. ZBrush would probably still be fine. Okay, ZBrush can handle millions and millions of polygons. That's why people use it. In order to get, oops, there we go. In order to get the detail that you may want on a character that you're modeling, you need to have millions of divisions. People will go into ZBrush and actually paint like the lines on your hand, not just like these thick lines, but like your fingerprint texture lines. They'll actually paint those into the surfaces. Okay. Now, at this point, 33 million divisions exist for this shape. Okay. So if we were in Maya and we smoothed something out this many times, we'd basically be locked to that shape. Okay. ZBrush allows us to go down levels and up levels. So I can basically say I want to edit the low res one, but I still want to keep all the detail on the high res one. Okay. So I hit Control D adds the divisions, Shift D. There we go. You can see it went down in divisions. Shift D again, Shift D again, Shift D again. So it's not removing those other divisions. All it's doing is letting me see and edit those other divisions. Okay. So now I can go here and I can add some stuff. Now I want to go back up the divisions. So I just hit D. Okay. If I hit Control D, that adds divisions. I'm not adding any more divisions. I just want to go back to that level. Again, something people will get confused about. Also, if you're forgetting hotkeys, now's a good time to write stuff down. Open up Notepad or whatever. There we go. So D, 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 and I'm back to about 2 million divisions, and you can see that those changes that I did carried over. Doesn't look beautiful, but it carried over.
It looks like a really weird chocolate truffle.
Or some weird bird.
Yeah.
Now here's where we may want to go down in divisions sometimes, or up, is that when I'm at this point, I'm going to go up one more. So I'm going to go to 32 divisions here, 32 million. If I'm at this point and I say I really want to smooth out these lines, I hold down Shift and I start clicking and dragging here, it's going to smooth them out, but the problem is there's so many points there that it just doesn't do a good job. Okay? So if I Shift D to get down to the next row, and Shift D again, and Shift D again, there we go. And now I hold down Shift and I start to smooth it out. You can see how much smoother or how much easier it is to smooth the stuff out. Okay, even if I go down even further, I can really smooth this whole shape out really quick. And again, all of that will carry over to the later ones as I hit D to get back up. Okay, now it still may have some artifacting from, you know, how it figures its stuff out, so I just smooth that out too. Sweet. Okay. So all we've been using so far is the standard brush. The standard brush is basically a circle. It's really bumpy like you were just seeing. Over here on the left, these are all the different brushes that you can use that come with ZBrush. You can download brushes, you can make your own brushes, you can make your own geometry and use them as brushes. It's like amazing what you can do with this. Just to kind of show you clay buildup. You typically, there's like 4, maybe 5 different brushes you would use. Clay buildup is one of them. And the way it works is you're simply building up clay. So if in this case, let's say I'm trying to build up where his eye would be, I would be able to build up the clay there, and then I could use Alt to push down where the actual eye is. Maybe shrink my brush some. Okay, and then I can use my smooth brush to help kind of smooth that out. Gorgeous. Okay, so that's what clay buildup is for. Each of these have a specific use. There is a smooth brush. By holding Shift, we automatically switch to it, regardless of what brush we're in. There is a polish brush, a planer brush. They all do something, okay? You can see planer does these like little facets. So again, if we wanted something that had a little bit more flat faces to it, this might be the brush for us to use. The hotkey for brushes is B. We click B, we can open up all the brushes here and look at them and see what they do. Use ones that you know. So standard one is one that you will constantly use. Clay buildup, the move brush, which is right here. Let me go down a level. Come on, there we go. So the move brush allows me just to grab pieces of this and just kind of move it around. Let me open up, I'm going to open up a file just so it's a little bit easier to demonstrate some of the stuff on. There we go. All right. There we go. So I have symmetry on. You can see one eye, and this character, one eye is closed, one eye is open. So with the move brush, I may say, okay, I don't like where these points are. I may want to move this up a little bit like this. Or maybe move that down some, or maybe move this up, or maybe move that down. So very easily, I can kind of manipulate what this surface is looking like. Now you'll notice that some of these shapes are not moving with it. So the horn and the eyebrows, those are on separate layers. They are not all in the same layer. It's just on that one piece. All right, so move brush, clay buildup, standard brush, the smooth brush, and then there's one called the Damien standard or the Dam standard brush. And what this one is good for are these little lines that are right here. So if I needed to add some detail to this character, I could go into this. That's too big. Tablet. There we go. And somewhat quickly I can add some detail to the character and then kind of smooth that out a bit. Now what's neat about this again is that if I look at it, it's cutting into it. I can go the opposite way if I hold down Alt and it'll raise the surface there. So if I need like a sharp edge, very easily again I can make that crisp edge. Okay. And those are pretty much the main brushes you're going to use. You may jump into a brush here or there, or I'm going to show other stuff, but that's the main ones you're going to use. Some of these, like, just so you can see, so on his hair here, I wanted to have these little, wrong button, spikes come out. So there is one called Snake Hook, and I'll just demonstrate it on his head. So basically it just pulls it out, and I can create that kind of like shape. Now it doesn't make it pretty, but then I can go back and kind of smooth it out. And that helps kind of get the shape that I need. There's also an inflate. So if something gets a little bit too thin, I can inflate it so that it gets a little bit thicker. And then smooth it out too. Awesome. Okay. These brushes here, if I go to this one, these are, they're called IMM brushes, and basically you're painting pieces of geometry onto your surface. So if I had something that I needed like a zipper on, I don't know why, but let's just put a zipper on his eye. So I'm going to go to my geometry, I'm going to go to my free subdivision levels. Go. And so now he has that zipper there, or I can switch it to this zipper. There it is. So think of something like Substance, where we're actually painting like texture maps on things. Now we're actually painting pieces of geometry on them. Right, sweet. So now he has a zipper on his eye. There's other stuff too. There's one for body parts. Here's all these different body parts that you could add. So here is a nose. And quickly, you can add a nose right there. Perfect. Okay, feet, whatever. Okay, it's unlimited as to what you can do. It's like amazing all the stuff you can do inside ZBrush. All right, I don't want to ruin this guy, so I'm going to go to Document. I'm going to go to New. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in Dennis's head. So I'm going to go to Import. Oh, just before I do that, notice how even though I went to New, he's still there. Okay, so just because I went to a new document, this area, it does not close my original file. So if I were to save, it would actually overwrite my original file. You have to go to new project or something. So where did I put that? 2520, 3D scan, scenes, head. As before, yes, and okay. Now, the second I added this head in here, notice how this became the main tool, and then I have this here, which is a recovered tool. The other stuff is all gone. If I go to my subtools, all the stuff from my other one is still listed inside here. So the hair and the horn and his teeth, all of those are still there. So this is why it's important to understand you don't want to ruin your stuff, right? Box documents, new. And again, this is one of those things that you hardly ever do. How often do I make a new document inside here? Usually you just start working and save your stuff. Oh, there it is, new. Oops, that's a new folder. I don't want that. Alright, well, we'll just ignore that for now. I'm just going to delete these. Delete. Always okay. Alright, so I'm going to drag the head out. There it is. I'm going to hit T and spin around. Alright, so there's the head. So what we want to do with these is obviously we want to clean them up a bit so that they're usable. Right now, obviously we would want the cushion in there. We may want to add some more detail to it, texture, whatever. Stuff like under here, I definitely want to fill that in so it's not just open. In order to do that, we're going to make this a different kind of surface. So hitting the Control D, that adds divisions to this, okay? If I go to my polyframe, these are all the different divisions that are on here. And you can see it looks like a mess. Like we talked about when you model stuff, use quads. This is not quads at all. I'm going to use a different kind of surface. And there's a specific reason for it is because it gives me even more abilities than this does. So under my geometry, under Dynamesh, I'm going to make this a Dynamesh object. Now watch what happens. I'm going to turn this polyframe off. When I hit Dynamesh, we may notice a difference depending on the complexity of this and depending on what this 512 number is set to. Not much of a difference. Awesome. Okay. So now it did, if you look at the divisions here, it did give me 8 million, where if I hit undo, a second ago I had 162.3. So maybe I can take this down some to 256 and then hit Dynamesh. It's adjusting. 7. All right, so that works still. Okay. I'm going to scale him down a bit. As I scale my brush up, when I get to 1,000, you can see how small the brush is compared to him. So I'm going to go to scale and just make him like a lot smaller. So click the scale box and then click and drag down. There you go. And then go back to draw, and now my brush is an appropriate size. Good. Okay. So with Dynamesh, what it allows me to do is basically I could, let's say that I made a hand. In Maya, if we wanted to make a hand, we would model the hand and one finger, then we would bust it off, and we would put it on this one, merge all the vertices, put it on this one, merge all the vertices, put it on this one, merge all the vertices, and so on. With this, all I have to do is copy that finger, move it here, and it automatically sews everything together. Move it here, sews everything together. Move it here, sew everything together. If I want to delete something, I can just grab stuff, and it'll just cut it right off. It's like super awesome. So I'm going to pick a good angle here where I can make sure that he's flat. That looks like it's a pretty good angle. I'm going to go to my brushes, and there is a trim down here, a trim curve that I want, or trim rectangle. I can use either one. Yes, I know that. All right, so to get to this, and it's stupid, but whatever, you hit Control Shift. That gives you trim rectangle. If you start using it, it doesn't work right away. So you let go of Control Shift, then you do it again, and then it works. I don't know why. So when I marquee this and then I let go, what it should do is cut off that part. Now, if it cuts off the wrong part, it cut off the right part. If it cuts off the wrong part, okay, watch how I can hold down the Alt key and see how it changes color. So that means that it's going to subtract the opposite. So then it would cut off the other part of the head. So if I went this way, we go. Then it would delete the other side of that. Okay? So if it happens you delete the wrong side, no big deal. Whoops. Then you just make sure you click on the right side. So I'm going to delete this. And you can hold down the space bar just to kind of adjust that box. Okay, so I'm holding space to move the box around. There we go. And then letting go of it. Okay, so I just want to have that thing gone. Now, if we didn't have Dynamesh, that trim brush wouldn't work. Also, our divisions here would be obviously less. Are you thinking? Yes, you are. ZBrush rarely locks up. Even if it does, usually it'll just jump right back when it's done. Maybe I've had it crash 5 times in the last 6 months. Not like Maya. 6 times in the last 6 months. Close you. Yep. Now you could also go into here and delete stuff while we're waiting for ZBrush to open. I could grab faces and just delete the faces inside here. That's totally acceptable also. The only issue is obviously you really can't see it too well. Maybe I deleted too much. No, that's good. I could also go into the paint selection. And if you don't know this about Maya, if you just delete the divisions between the surfaces, you can just double click and it'll let you delete the surfaces. So like these pieces that are just kind of floating, I can just double click it. Because they're not connected to anything else, it'll just let me delete those. Whoops, I need that. Alright, I told ZBrush to open again. Alright, then I can export that as an OBJ, bring that into ZBrush, and then still use it, either way. Yes. Now here is something nice ZBrush does do. If it does terminate, it has saved your work. So I can go to my last recovered tool and bring that one back up. I don't need to because it didn't really do anything, so I'm just going to bring it back in. Head. Yes, and okay. Okay, drag the head out. Oops. I'm going to make it small because I remember last time it was really big. That's good. I'm going to go to my geometry. I'm going to go to Dynamesh. The default's 128, so I'm going to cut that in half and then go to Dynamesh. There you go. So you can really see a loss of quality there when we made this one. So I'm going to hit undo again because I don't want to lose that quality. Maybe I'll leave it at 128. It wasn't too bad. Maybe 256. Yep, that's good. So 256 is a good amount. All right. So then I'm going to go back to my trim tool. So I go back to trim. Now, all the hotkeys, even brushes, have hotkeys. So when I go to my brush and I hit B, I know that trim starts with the letter T, because I can spell. And then I know that the trim rectangle has the letter M next to it, so that's the hotkey for that one. So as you start playing with these, you'll understand these a lot more, and you'll literally just be toggling between brushes via hotkeys. Okay, Control-Shift, let go of Control-Shift, drag Control-Shift again, and then cut off the bottom.
Lightning strikes twice.
It worked the first time. It worked the first time, didn't it?
The head, no problem.
Right.
Just want you to model the cushion, that's it.
That's it. There we go. See, I told you ZBrush would not fail us. Okay. So now what we need to do, I inspect it, I kind of look around the surface. This is what it does awesomely. See how nicely closed off that is there? See how Maya just left this horrible mess underneath for us to have to figure out? All right. So now what we need to do is we need to patch this thing up. So right, so let's start up here at something easier, and then we'll work to that one. So right here, I want to fill this hole in. So I'm going to do a clay buildup. Actually, I'll do a pinch. BPI is pinch. It's faster for me to even just type that in than to try to actually find it. There we go. That might be a little bit too aggressive, but we can smooth it out. Okay, so we do that. Now you'll notice if I turn my wireframe on that I've stretched out the points in here. This is one of the cool things about Dynamesh, is that it basically figures out what the shape of it is and rebuilds the mesh every time we tell it to. Okay, so if I hold the control key and I drag off here on the side, what it's going to do is it's going to rebuild that mesh. And what it should do is, let me turn this off, because it was so close, it just filled it in. Okay, because those pieces were like right on top of each other, it just said, cool, fill it in. So now we can do the same thing down here.
Are you showing a demo?
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Nobody can see the screen at all because of the light in here.
That's fine.
That's okay.
They're just paying attention for me. All right. So this way, this part is going to be a little bit trickier. So I have to figure out, how am I going to do that? So I can maybe I'll use inflate and kind of inflate these pieces so that they're touching. Now obviously there's a flap back there, but I'm just going to ignore the flap because I want this to all close off. And you can ignore some of the disgustingness and just let it do its thing. I could also use the clay buildup. Oops. And start to pull out these shapes here. Again, I don't care if this goes way below that because I can just use that trim tool again to get that to trim out. I could also use the move tool to pull the pieces together. Okay, the idea here is I just want to have this as one solid mesh. And then I can control drag again, and that fills it in. I'm going to inflate some of these areas here. Control drag to fill it in. And so you can see how it's weird, but it filled it in, right? I'm going to pinch that area right here. Oops. I have to be careful I don't go through to the other side, because it is obviously showing that. Yeah. There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to ignore those pieces in the bottom for now. Cool. I do the same thing here. Use my clay buildup or my move brush or my whatever brush just to kind of fill this area in. Now the other thing that I can do, and this is where this is awesome, is that I can go to my subtool and I can say insert, not append, and let's say I put in a sphere. Okay, so it keeps my head right there and it makes a sphere. So I'm going to take the sphere and just scale it down. Okay, I'm going to go to my move brush and just kind of reshape that. And what I'm doing is basically just taking this other piece of geometry and filling it in. There we go. And I can tweak that after I start playing with it. Okay, good. So if I control drag here, the sphere is not a Dynamesh. The head is a Dynamesh. So then I'd want to go through my geometry. I want, oh, sorry, not my geometry, my subtool. And I want to merge these into the same layer. So I go to merge, I say merge visible. Merge down. Yes, there we go. Merge visible should have worked. I just went to merge down, that worked. So now I can control drag, and then what it's going to do is it's going to take these two shapes and put them together. There we go. And so now I can come in here with my smooth brush and just kind of smooth that out a bit. So for like yours, Meg, where you have the extra leg, or the legs you were adjusting, you can, right, you can cut the legs off of one, import the other legs as a separate subtool, and just put them together, and then boom. Being generous. There we go. Okay. So once I get to the point where this is all laid out nicely, I want to fix that bottom part. I'm going to insert puts the shape in a separate subtool. Append will put it on the same subtool. So if I go to append, cylinder, I lied. Why didn't I put it there? Oh, because it's not a Dynamesh, whatever. All right, I still have to merge it. So I'm going to just make a platform for this thing. Oops, make sure I'm on the right layer. There we go. And then I'll switch to this view. I'll pull it up. All right, so now I have more of a clean platform. Yep, that works. Okay. I'm going to hit Control D to smooth this out a bit. Then I'm going to merge these down. Yes. And then I'm going to Control drag, and that will put them together. And so any hole that was down there is no longer there. So now that I have basically one solid mesh, now I can do whatever I want to it. Okay. I'm going to save this before I do anything else. There's a save as here. There is a document save and save as. Neither of these are ones that you want to use. You just hit Control S. And this will let you save your stuff. Head project. And then let you work. Okay? So now I can go in here and start to shape and customize and do whatever I want for this. Now because this is a scan, the symmetry wouldn't work. So if I hit X to go for symmetry, you'll see where the red dot is on the other side where it's not really lined up to where it should be. Not a big deal. You just manually go through and do your stuff. So let's say for this one I wanted to tweak some of the shapes. So I'm going to go with my sculpt or my clay buildup and maybe not make that so intense. There we go. A little bit there, a little bit there. A little bit of softness. I'm going to go in with my clay buildup and kind of push the eyes in a little bit more. Oops. And then soften that out. Let's say that I want to put a mouth on here. I'm going to go with my clay buildup and my brush. Something like that. And then I'm going to go with my Damien standard brush and just cut that in. I need more divisions. I can hit Control D and that would work fine too with Dynamesh, but the best way is to just up this resolution. Okay, so I up the resolution, I Control drag, I get more divisions. You see the huge difference it makes just having, obviously, the right amount of divisions there. There you go. So a quick mouth at least, but something. Maybe I want to have more of a chin. I can use the move tool. Oh, come on. this bump that's back here. Okay, so a lot of this, don't try to get it too accurate at first. Just kind of go in there and just kind of play around with the tools. So we're just giving him more of a jaw so he has more of a bony face. We can give him some nostrils. If you work with a tablet, this area out here you have to use for your scrubbing because the right click is a little, well, for me at least, the right click seems a little trickier to use. All right. There we go. So now you have some nostrils and whatever else. Smooth it out. Looks like what? Oh. What's Star Wars? Disney Star Wars. There we go. Sweet. Awesome. So you could do a little bit more work on it, but the major thing I want to see is that he's cleaned up. He doesn't have any holes in him in random spots. And then you just done some minor alterations to it. Okay. Someone last semester did a chameleon. When it scanned, it was like a toy chameleon. When it scanned, the legs and the tail and the base were all kind of welded together. So they went through and cut out the pieces and made sure everything was like nice and neat. The trim brushes that are down here you can use for other stuff too. So I could do a trim lasso. And let's say that I want to cut out this portion. I can use the trim lasso and just draw a shape, and it'll cut that out of there. So if I need to actually separate elements, I can do that using that trim lasso. It'll just cut pieces like that. There we go. So you can see how I cut just that piece. Sweet. All right, and then when you're done, obviously save your file as a ZBrush file. And then we're not doing any texture painting on this specific one. We'll get more into ZBrush. Good enough for your first one to play with. Cool? Questions?